Welcome back. So for the second video on dynamic structures, we're going to look at example 6 and note set 7, where basically we're going to create this variable canvas and then use dynamic structures to create this left side of this flow chart. We're not going to do the right side because it gets a little bit more complicated if you try to include this second course. But for our purposes, we're just going to work on this left side to solve this problem. So I recommend opening up this document because I'm going to move it out of the way for the screen, and I'll read along with you. It starts on page 22 if you want to pause and open up example number 6. So this is going to be example 6 from note set 7. And the goal here, create a structure canvas that has vibration grades in it. So if I come back to that image again, maybe I will bring it back on the screen for a second. Underneath canvas, I have the course vibrations. I have 3 students' names, and I have exams and homeworks for those students. And I have all of their grades as well. So the things that we want to change dynamically are what student are we on and what assignment are we on. So let's include the students in an array. Maybe I'll say the students were Nathan, Melissa, Maddie, and I'll always do strings for this, strings for structures. Just because if you do it with, you try to count things, it might be weird because arrays that are characters end up having multiple spots. But structures is a little bit, but strings is a little bit easier. Well, let me come back here. So we have our students defined, and we also want to do our dynamic structuring to what type of assignment we're on. And we have exams and we have homeworks. And what I'm going to do, maybe I'll again bring this up one more time, just so I can kind of talk about it, always see it. Is I'm going to organize all of their grades in this order. So let me do something like this, if it lets me. On multiple screens, so it's not great at this. That is good enough. And you can see it all. So let's say the grades are going to be 90 and 84. That will be the exams of Nathan. I'll have that in a row. Maybe I'll do 96 and 95. Nathan's homeworks. I'll do Melissa's 84 and 91. I'll do Melissa's homework. I will do Maddie's exams, and then I will do Maddie's homeworks. So if we run this real quick, we open up grades, we can see that we have this array that matches the assignments for the students, where each of the rows are either exams or homeworks. Rows 1, 3, and 5 are exams. Rows 2, 4, and 6, based on the way I defined it, are homeworks. And now there are multiple ways of doing it. This is just the way that I chose to do it to give you a little bit more thoughts about things. And also note that these are Nathan's grades. These are Melissa's grades. These are Maddie's grades. So they're in order of the students that are listed in the array. So again, the general idea is that if I wanted to do a structure, let's ignore the dynamic part of it. If I were to do canvas.vibrations.Nathan.exams, I want that to be equal to 90 and 84. That's the goal. This is fixed. The things we're going to change dynamically are the student and the assessment. So depending on where we are in our grades matrix, basically, we will determine what these inputs should be here for the structure. What should those codes be with our parentheses, with our dynamics aspect of it? So let's think. I have 3 students. So if I were to do canvas.vibrations, I then have to go through 3 sets of students. Maybe I say for JJ is equal to 1 to 3. or if I were to make it as general as possible, for j is equal 1 to the length of students. So there's 3 students in this class. If I added more, it'll accommodate that. And just to kind of illustrate this, maybe I'll do canvas.vibrations. And because I want it to be dynamic, we just talked about this in the basics video. Go back to part 1 of this dynamic structures section in the videos to get a feel for this. But the idea is that I have to replace the name into this variable students. And the only way that MATLAB doesn't think that I actually want to name it students is by writing students of JJ in these outer parentheses. That's kind of the goal here. Now, we can't equal this to anything because I haven't gotten to the next level, but this is a decent start. Go equals something. I don't know what that is yet. This won't run because it doesn't have anything to assign it to. But we're going to go through each student. So when students, or when JJ is 1, that'd be canvas.vibrations. And then we're going to go to students of 1 and then replace that as the name. So that'll be Nathan. JJ will be 2, canvas.vibrations, students of 2. Again, because of these outer parentheses, it'll steal Melissa. And then for JJ is 3, canvas.vibrations, students of 3. We'll go ahead and take Maddie from this array. So this will allow us to have canvas.vibrations each of the students. So we have our sublayer created with the students, which is good. That's what we want. So the next step, though, is I need to do this for all the assessments. So I have to do this for one student. And then once I'm on that student, I have to go through each of the assessments. That should be screaming at you the idea of keeping something constant and changing other things. And that's going to be a nested for loop, which means that I'm going to do another for loop in here. Maybe I think I do a KK in the notes. Yeah, I do a KK. That'll be 1 to the length of assessments. So here I'll just comment this is 1, 2, 3. This is 1 and 2. We haven't done this yet, but this will be based on JJ. So if JJ is 1, and remember, that will be 1 for the entirety of this loop. When JJ is 1, we'll come in, we'll make KK 1. We haven't included it yet, but we will. But if JJ is 1, we'll have canvas.vibrations.students of 1, which is Nathan, come back up to the second value of KK, canvas.vibrations.students of 1 again, because JJ is 1. So we'll still be on Nathan for the entirety of this loop until we're done with it. Then we come back up and then we'll go to the next student. So that's kind of what we want. So in order to do this, I will go ahead and call out from the assessment matrix what iteration I want based on the loop. So it will start with JJ is 1, that's a student, we'll be stuck on Nathan. And then we'll come here and we will make KK equal to 1. We'll do canvas.vibrations.nathan.assessments of 1, which will be exams. Come back up. Within this K for loop, KK is now 2, canvas.vibrations.nathan.assessments of 2. And because we have those parentheses, it'll end up being homeworks. So just to give an example, I'm just going to make this like 100. So every student will end up having 100 for all their things. So let's just illustrate where we're at. Oops, I left things suppressed here. Let's do it again. So canvas. Inside the variable canvas is vibrations. I do canvas.vibrations can allow us to go a level down, and we can see that we have all 3 of our students now because of the fact we have this outer for loop that will allow me to iterate through each of them. If I do canvas.vibrations.nathan, the next level down is my assessments. So I will have exams and homeworks. Oops, type vibration drawing. Canvas.vibrations.nathan, and I'll see that I have homeworks and exams from this dynamic structure here. If that is confusing, I recommend rewinding and rewatching this before coming to the next part, because the next part is also kind of challenging based on the way that this matrix is defined. So pause it and rewind. But if you're ready to keep going, I'm going to take this matrix and put it here for a second. We can see that in this matrix, based on the way I defined it, I'll pull it back up. I have the first student's exams, the first student's homeworks, the second student's exams, the second student's homeworks, the third student's exams, the third student's homework. So there's 6 rows And the first two rows are assigned to the first student. The second two rows, rows 3 and 4, are the second student, and the last two rows are for student number 3. So if we look at this, we see that Nathan, which again is the first student, so that would be JJ is 1. Let me see if I can show that at the same time as this code. So we can see that we're going to go through the students at the top. So JJ is 1 when we're on Nathan, then it'll be 2 when we're on Melissa, and 3 when we're on Maddie. And once we're in here, we will switch the values of K. So you can see that even while we're stuck on Nathan, 1, 1, we will go through both assessments. KK is 1, KK is 2, because of this for loop here. So when KK is 1, oops, where'd it go? It's not letting me see the whole thing. It's better. We end up having the first row. When KK is 2, we'll end up having the second row in the grades matrix based on the way we defined it. When KK is 3, or not KK is 3, when we're on student 2 and KK becomes 1 again, we'll be on the third row, and then so on. So that's kind of the pattern that we want to do in order to accomplish this. So let's go ahead and troubleshoot a bit and see if we can figure this out. So again, I'm just going to show the grades matrix here. I'm just going to run this for a second, just so we can see what the grades matrix looks like. So the grades matrix here, this is Nathan's exams, Nathan's homework. Melissa's exams, Melissa's homework. Maddie's exams, Maddie's homework. So maybe our first thought is, okay, maybe I'll do grades. And because they're a bunch of rows, maybe I'll just do KK like that. So what this says is, give me every column in the KKth row. Okay. So let's see what happens if we do that. This is wrong, but let's see why it's wrong. Canvas dot vibrations. I do have the 3 students, so that's correct. The left side is good. If I go to Nathan, I will see that we have, okay, 90 and 84. Those are the exams. That's good, because those are his 2 exams. And I have 96 and 95. That's good. Okay. But then what happens? Let's say we go again. Let's say we do canvas.vibrations, and then we go to Melissa. Oops. Melissa. Uh-oh. I'm getting the same exact values here because of the fact that KK just starts over. KK begins at 1 and 2 again. So KK is 1, it's 2. You change the student. KK is 1 and 2. So every student will end up having the same exam grades. Canvas.vibrations.Nathan, canvas.vibrations. First, and then let's do Maddie. You can see that all of them have the same exact grades because it's just taking the first and second row out of the matrix. Well, grades again. These 2 rows, rows 1 and 2, keep getting called because that is the only value of KK that is working. So that's no good. Okay. So maybe your next thought is, let me add 2 to this. So that means what? Well, now I've added 2. That allows me to go to the next set of rows. But the problem is the same. Because now instead of being on rows 1 and 2, where will you end up? You'll end up in rows 3 and 4. So if I do canvas.vibrations.Nathan, I could see 84 and 91, 100 and 100. So each time this loop, KK is still 1, KK is still 2, and we add 2 to it. So that means it's always alternating between 3 and 4. So again, no matter which student we do, every time we do it, those exams and homework grades end up being the same. So again, that is a problem. So what we need to think about is, can we incorporate the value of the student into it? Because if we're on student 1, that tells us to use rows 1 and 2. If we're on student 2, that tells us to go to rows 3 and 4. So we need to find a way to incorporate how students are involved, and that's done through the variable JJ. So this is no good still. So let me pull up grades again. So again, KK is 1 and 2. So maybe when KK is 1, and I'm on the second student, maybe I'll just add 2 to it. Meaning I add 2 to JJ. Maybe that's the first thought. So I do KK plus 2 times JJ, and we'll say every column. So it says in row 1 plus 2 times whatever the JJ is. And we'll see what happens. If we run this, we end up with an error. And the reason we end up with an error, let's see, it only does Nathan and Melissa. If I do Nathan, let me pull up the grades matrix again. Nathan's grades are columns 3 and 4. Okay, that's not right. Well, what about the other person? The other person's Melissa. There's 78 and 102, which is the next set of rows. So that means we're off by a student. We messed something up, and let's figure out why. So maybe I'll write on this. Let's do KK. I'll also do JJ. And J's are hard to write with this mouse. JJ. And then we'll say the row. So we come in to this first for loop. JJ is 1. KK will be 1. Just based on that, KK plus 2 times JJ brings us to row 3, which is why Nathan ended up having that third row of grades. If JJ is 1 and KK is 2, we're still on Nathan, but now we're going to go to the next assessment. That will give us row 4 because KK is 1. KK is 2 plus 2 times 1. That'll give us row 4. So we're really close. We're right on the right track here. So let me turn this off. Let me erase this. So really close. Okay, let's clear that. So because I'm basically 1 extra student ahead, let me subtract 1 from this. The reason being is that if I'm on student 1, I want my row to be 1. So if I subtract 1 from this second term ends up being 0. So then I'm just in the KK row for that first student. And this will actually be correct. So if I do canvas.vibrations.Nathan, we see that their grades are there. If I do canvas.vibrations.Melissa, there's the hundreds again. And then canvas.vibrations.Maddie, there's our final sets of grades. You can see that that is what it is in that order. The 1984 and 9695 are Nathan's. The exams are 1984, 96, and 95. Melissa's are 84, 91. See Melissa here, 100 and 100. And then the last one's 78, 102, and 80 and 85. So let's just do this one more time on a table to fully explain this. I shouldn't have erased the table, but whatever. So JJ, KK, we'll have rows. Grab this and move it over a bit. So we come in with the first student, that's Nathan. JJ is 1. That's this outer for loop here. When we come into the inner for loop, we're going to end up going 1 first. So what is our row? We have 1 plus 2 times 1 minus 1. That means it's 0. So that means we're in row 1. Okay. We're still in the KK loop. So KK has to go to 2 and JJ hasn't changed. So now if we do it, JJ is still 1. So that means that this second term goes to 0. And that means that ends up being in row 2, which is good. That's our assessments. Okay. We are done with the inner loop. So now what we have to do is come back up to JJ and make it the next value, which is 2. So now JJ will be 2. And what happens to KK? Well, we started over because we're entering into the smaller for loop again. These mouse writing sucks. Sorry. So this is a 2. That's a 1. If I'm in JJ is 2, what happens to this guy now? Well, that's 2 times 2 minus 1, which gives us 2, which means that we're adding an extra 2 to KK. So that gives us 3. KK again will go up to 2. 2 times 1, we're adding another value of 2 plus kk. That gives us 4. If we keep going now, we're going to go to the last student, which is going to be JJ. Excuse me, JJ is 3. KK starts over 1. So now instead of this JJ being 2, it'll be 3. And you have 2 times 3 minus 1, which is 2 times 2 is 4, added to the value of KK. And that is what is going to allow us to go through all 6 of those rows and get it together. So this last part here was not really dynamic structures. This was more logic. This stuff over here is the dynamic structures thing. Because every time that we access students of JJ and we have it in parentheses, that tells us to go to the variable students and pick out the JJ element, which might be Nathan, Melissa, or Maddie, depending on what the value of JJ is. So this is tricky. I know this is tricky. If you understand this, you'll be in very good shape moving forward because the second project is going to involve structures in some way. If you have questions, please come talk to me. I hope this helps. Okay, bye.